Thank you. My name is Bonnie Rich, and along with Senator Kennedy, we will be chairing this joint committee hearing from the State House and the State Senate. And to begin, I would like to ask Chairman Nix if he would mind opening us in prayer.
Thank you. Let's pray. Father, we pause for just a moment of silence to acknowledge you. Lord, we ask for your presence, for your blessings. Lord, we ask for your wisdom as we consider the information before us. Lord, bless those who will come before us to speak. Give them the calmness and the clarity to make their points. Lord, help us to listen. And Lord, help us to do the things that would honor you in all that we do. In Christ's name, amen.
Okay, before we get started, the Georgia Building Authority has asked me to make some announcements. We can have no flash photography or flash video, and no political signs, please. Also, speakers, you will be speaking from the front podium over here. We'll call your names. We're taking you in the order that you signed up, just like we did the last time. And we will call the next two people who will be speaking. And if you will, please line up along the wall there so that we can keep a flow. Welcome everyone. Welcome to our committee members who have traveled from all parts of the state to be here. And welcome also to our members of the public who have taken time to come and give your input. We very much appreciate that and value it. We want to be sure that we're hearing from you all, the citizens of the state of Georgia, and not just elected officials. So we're going to do that through a couple of methods. First is these public hearings. And this is the second one out of 11 that we will hold across the state to hear from the public about redistricting. We have already heard from some of you and from some interest groups about the way that we are conducting our hearings, and we are taking all of that information in, and we are trying to apply the best practices based upon the finances, what we can afford to do financially and logistically. So we are trying to make this as open and available as possible. We have had a lot of interest in this hearing, and fortunately, you are all here present to speak. So we're going to continue our limitation of 2 minutes. I think we have just under 60 people signed up, but we want to make sure that if there was someone who couldn't make it right at 5, that we do not cut them off. So we are going to keep it at 2 minutes each and take you in the order in which you signed up. If you end up not having an opportunity to speak here today, remember that we are going to be having 9 more of these meetings after today. Some of them are in person, and 1 more will be virtual. We'll be holding meetings in Cumming, Dalton, Athens, Augusta, Brunswick, Albany, Columbus, and Macon. At each of these hearings, we're going to be hearing from people across the state because we do want to hear from you. If you cannot speak at a hearing, or even if you do, please also find on our website, we have a portal right on the home page for the State House at house.ga.gov. There is a banner at the top where you can click to submit your written testimony, and we will consider that as well. We will give equal weight to everything that we hear. We don't give more weight to the oral testimony than we do the written. So we want to hear from you, and if that's the way that you can present your perspective, then we have that set up for you to do easily. All right. With that, I will turn it over to Senator Kennedy. I did.
Well, good afternoon. It's nice to see everyone here. I appreciate everyone's interest in the important work of this committee. As Chairman Rich said, I want to extend a welcome to the public. You are why we are here. We want your input. And particularly, I want to say hello, excuse me, and welcome to my fellow legislators that have traveled from across the state, both Senate and House members. So one of the questions that we're asked a lot about our work on this committee is everyone wants to know when the special session will be, which is when the mechanics or the logistics of actually passing maps or modified maps will be. And the answer is we don't know when the special session will be. The Census Bureau is telling us that we're going to be getting partial data in late August that could be used to draw maps, but the full data is not expected until the end of September. So there's still some lawsuits that are presently pending about the data that's being supplied and the utility of that data, but we can't do a lot until we get the actual census data. So we'll be collecting comments right now, tonight, and for the other times that Chairman Rich mentioned. And by the way, if you want to know she mentioned all the cities. For the details of the dates of those cities, please go to the House or Senate redistricting website for the committee, for the websites, and you'll see the date for the cities so that hopefully you can tell folks to participate there. We'll be collecting comments today and from across the state, and we'll likely hear from people more than once that have issues and certainty about the timing. And so we've done our best to try to explain the process that we're working under and also what will be a compressed time frame once that data comes in to actually get the maps drawn. At some point after these hearings, we'll be having committee meetings to adopt redistricting guidelines and principles. So tonight, for our second hearing, the first one in person, here's how we're going to approach things. First, we'll watch a short video that our media services folks have put together to educate everyone on some of the basics of redistricting. Then we will open it up to individuals who have signed up so that we can hear from you. Often when politicians hold hearings, they really want to hear themselves talk. But I assure you that Chairman Rich and I, that is not our purpose tonight. Our purpose is to hear from you. Consistent with how we handled these hearings in 2001 and the 2011 cycles, we're not going to ask questions or answer questions, but we're here to listen to whatever it is that you want to share with us. In order to respect everyone's time, we're going to give everyone 2 minutes to each individual. You can always submit longer, more written or detailed materials. I would ask that you please respect the time frame. One of our assistants is going to be having a clock that's available for you to see, so you'll know how much time you have remaining of 2 minutes, and there'll be a buzzer at the end of that. Please be respectful of that, and that's not for Chairman Rich and I, but it's really to be respectful of the other people that have taken their time to come and they want to speak too, so please don't intrude on their time. If you could be respectful of that, we'd appreciate that very much. So, one final bit, and you may have said this, but if we have any overflow issues, 450 in the Capitol building, which is one floor up, room right up in that direction, is the overflow. If you hear from folks that they can't have a seat, we have that designated. We certainly want to accommodate the public as best we can. So with that, let's watch a video, and then we'll get on to our first witness to be heard from tonight.
Every 10 years following the decennial census, the process of redistricting begins all over our country. Let's take a look at what that redistricting is and what else we need to know before we begin this process in the state of Georgia.
My name is Gina Wright, and I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Legislative and Congressional Reapportionment. We are a nonpartisan joint office of the Georgia General Assembly, and we serve both the House and the Senate.
What is redistricting?
As the population in our state grows, the number of people in each district must be adjusted so that the population in each district is as close to equal as practicable. This is done by redistricting, or modifying the boundary lines of the districts. In Georgia, our new 2020 census resident population total is 10,711,908 people. Because of this population increase, each of our 14 congressional districts will need to adjust to have 765,136 people in them. At the state level, our legislative branch of government has 56 state senators and 180 representatives in the state house, elected by districts. State Senate districts will be redrawn to now include around 191,284 people. State House districts will also need to increase in population size to around 59,511 people. In the Georgia General Assembly, there is a standing committee on redistricting in both the House and the Senate. Each committee has a chairman.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Rich. I'm chairman of the Legislative and Congressional Reapportionment Committee in the State House. I've served in that capacity since 2019. Since 2018, I have represented District 97, which includes parts of Duluth, Suwannee, and Sugar Hill in Gwinnett County.
Hello, I'm State Senator John F. Kennedy, and I represent the 18th District in the State Senate, which includes all of Monroe, Peach, Crawford, and Upson counties, and part of Bibb County and Houston County. I also am chairman of the Senate Redistricting and Reapportionment Committee.
What is reapportionment, and how is it different from redistricting?
The term apportionment is the act of dividing and allocating representation proportionally. The United States Constitution requires that all 435 House districts shall be apportioned among the 50 states based on population from each decennial census. There is a guarantee of at least one seat per state in the United States House, and a method of equal proportions determines how the other 385 are distributed. Every 10 years, states may gain or lose congressional districts based on how they gained or lost population in comparison to other states based on data from the decennial census.
The state of Georgia presently has 14 seats in the U.S. House, and the 2010 census resulted in a gain of 1 new seat for the state following an increase of 2 new districts in 2000. It's common to interchange the term reapportionment with the term redistricting, but the two terms really don't mean the same thing. Reapportionment only occurs at the federal level when U.S. House districts are distributed amongst the states. Even with a gain of over 1 million people in Georgia over the past decade, Georgia will continue to have 14 congressional districts.
When does redistricting take place?
Traditionally, the governor of Georgia issues a call for a special legislative session in late summer or early fall following the arrival of the new census data. The sole purpose of this session is to adopt newly redrawn maps for all statewide district plans and may also include new maps for local county commission or school board districts. The session occurs so that all county election officials have sufficient time to update voter district assignments once the process is complete prior to elections the next year. After the Georgia General Assembly adopts new maps and the governor signs the bills into law, they become the new election districts for use in the next election cycle or on the date specified in the legislation. This year, with COVID-related delays in the census, the special session will likely take place later in the year because we will not receive full census data until late August or September.
What other factors do we have to consider besides equal population?
The first mission of redistricting is to ensure that districts are roughly equal to each other. Equalizing population ensures that each individual's vote counts the same toward their representatives. But equal population is only one part of the puzzle.
Maps must also comply with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and traditional principles of redistricting, like ensuring communities of interest are represented, avoiding major changes to existing representation in the legislature, and keeping local government jurisdictions whole. Those legal criteria are what often keeps maps from being drawn as perfect squares across our state.
Why do we have public hearings?
The redistricting process begins with hearing from the public. The General Assembly is ready to hear from you about the uniqueness of your part of the state, what communities of interest are here, and what important factors it should consider as we all prepare to redraw the districts later this year.
Okay, let me thank the staff for their help in putting that video together. One more piece of housekeeping. We're going to hear from all of the public that are here that have signed up first. And if we have House and Senate members that want to address the committee, if we have time, we'll certainly try to accommodate you as well. All right, with that, we will go to our first witness, Marcy McCarthy. Yes, in 2 minutes, yes. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marcy McCarthy, and I'm the chairman of the DeKalb GOP, representing over 101,000 Republican and right-leaning voters. DeKalb County currently resides in the 4th, 5th, and 6th districts, with the 6th district comprising 45% of our electorate, albeit it is the smallest component geography-wise. Much like Metro Atlanta, DeKalb is now a blue desert, sprinkled with red and pink islands versus a purple pasture. Right-leaning voters in DeKalb County have no representation in Congress, the Capitol, and in City Hall, and have become disenfranchised. Because of the continued failures of the party in power, we have equity instead of equality, division instead of diversity, and a crime wave that affects all lives and livelihoods. Continuing to ignore this full spectrum of legal voters has created the rise and terror of Stacey Abrams. The Constitution protects Americans' right to vote. It does not give a political party a right to win. There's no individual right in the Constitution to live in a district that elects a candidate from an individual's political party, and everyone's definition or conception of measure of partisan fairness is different. On behalf of the Georgia legal voters, I am asking today the General Assembly to take into consideration 3 things when redrawing our maps: adhere to constitutional redistricting and to comply with the Voting Rights Act, as well as to adhere to all federal and state laws. My second point and request is to have clean redistricting. Districts should be sufficiently compact and preserve communities of interest by respecting municipal county boundaries. Districts should avoid combining disparate populations to the extent possible. And my third and final point is common sense redistricting. Let's not give the ammo to sue it's blue, give untethered power to unelected judges, and most importantly, not ignore democracy in the Constitution. Simply put, I'm asking you to put the democracy back into DeKalb County. Thank you. My testimony will be submitted written as well.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy. Pamela Reaven. Ms. Reaven,
Yes.
you have the floor.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Pamela Reaven. I live in East Cobb, in Cobb County. I'm in District 6. Good afternoon. I start out by quoting the National Redistricting Foundation, in particular Marina Jenkins, saying that the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling in 2013, ruling Shelby v. Holder, opened the floodgates by removing federal oversight to redistricting, and in fact, she stated this has led to Georgia's new restrictive election law also. She went on to say that this signals what is to come using voter suppression in redistricting. I'm here to talk against those talking points. I listened to the first online hearing, and all I heard were the young community minority activists. They didn't want their votes diluted. That's what I got from it. So let's get real and talk facts. First, I want to say that the new election law does not suppress votes, and it's insulting to see so many people mimicking that and have never read it. In fact, there are problems were addressed and fixed, so many votes suppressed because their vote, very many voters were suppressed because their vote was stolen by ballot harvesting and stuffing the drop boxes. I talked to many of those people, so let's get over that. Redistricting happens every 10 years in every state to make it fair to equal representation in districts after the census is done. So my vote is not diluted. After or on the time when this is done, you can always go to the state SOS and look up where you are at any time after this is done, or your county Board of Elections website. I'm sure you're not going to dice and slice communities like our prior Democrat majorities have done in the state. I have confidence in you, which it is, I'm not going to let you dilute my vote and keep our communities separate. That's a short 2 minutes. Anyways, thank you very much. In summary, I have trust that you're going to do the right thing. The law and the Constitution is on your side.
Thank you, Ms. Reaven. We appreciate your comments. Betsy Kramer is next, and then Ms. Aldridge, you'll be behind her, and then Marylee Gober behind Ms. Aldridge. Okay, Ms. Kramer, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Betsy Kramer. I am currently the acting chairman of Fulton County Republican Party. I'm an over 30-year resident of the metro area. I originally lived in Cobb, then Gwinnett, and for the past 22 years, my home has been in Johns Creek in Fulton County. My family moved to Johns Creek before it was anticipated becoming a city. I currently reside in the 6th Congressional District, and I'm very active in the community. I want to speak to you today about the future shape of the 6th Congressional District. There can be many possibilities, but only a few make sense to many of us who live here. My odds-on favor possibility is for the 6th District to center around the Georgia 400 corridor. The Georgia 400 corridor in general has mutual interests and concerns on the development, work lives, recreation, and transportation. We are an identical community of interest. The corridor would encompass communities around Georgia 400, including South Fulton County all the way down to Buckhead. The South Forsyth is like North Fulton, a newly, vastly growing area. When I first moved to Johns Creek, much of the city was underdeveloped, as was Forsyth County. Our two county areas reflect the same interests. My proposal also retains the core of the existing 6th District, thus not radically changing the district, but bringing in more harmonious interests in a compact shape along the Georgia 400 corridor. In closing, my proposal for the reconfiguration, of the 6th District is the best path forward for the Georgia General Assembly. Thank you for hearing me, and I look forward to the results of your hard tasks you have on your plate. And I.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Your timing is perfect. Thank you. We understood most of it. Ms. Aldridge.
Yes.
Good afternoon. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Leah Aldridge. I'm an attorney. I'm a resident of Buckhead within the city limits of Atlanta and Fulton County. And my party affiliation is not really relevant to my testimony today, because today I'm asking you to do your constitutional duty under the United States Constitution and the great state of Georgia, and to determine that Buckhead, Sandy Springs, and Brookhaven are indeed a community of interest whose shared political voice must be protected. We're all aware of the terror that has filled the residents of Buckhead recently. We're afraid of being carjacked in the middle of the day at our local filling stations. We're afraid to go shopping in our local malls. We're afraid of being shot. Our streets are filled with street racers that are waking our families in neighborhoods like Peachtree Park and Buckhead Forest. And plans are underway right now to destroy our single-family neighborhoods and tree canopy. We pay a disproportionate share of taxes, both property taxes and state income taxes, yet the current map robs our community of representative government in the state House, the state Senate, and for the most part, in Congress. When I ran for state Senate against Jen Jordan in the 6th, as a Republican, I won Buckhead. As a Republican, I won Sandy Springs. As a Republican, I won Brookhaven. But I did not win that race because my community is politically tethered to a community in another county across the river whose biggest headline last Thursday wasn't about shootings and wasn't about carjackings. It was about traffic. A traffic problem that occurred when a Red Bull truck got dislodged in the covered bridge in Smyrna. I urge this committee to draw Buckhead together with Sandy Springs and Brookhaven into a district where the majority of her population will have representation, that reflects her values and will be responsive to her needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aldridge. Marylee Gober.
Thank you. I know you all have a very difficult task in front of you, and I just brought a visual for you. This is District 80 for the House. And I know it's very difficult, especially in rural areas, to be dividing up for the House districts, but at least in the metro areas, I would ask that you all respectfully consider, to the extent possible, to not divide communities, cities, counties, and school systems, because we all have different needs in these communities and counties. And as you can see, my District 80 has been divided for the last 10 years between Fulton and DeKalb, and our school systems have been divided, our cities, our communities. So to the extent possible, thank you very much for your consideration of putting at least the metro areas in their communities together.
Thank you, ma'am. Anna Dennis. Ms. Dennis? Anna Dennis. Oh, okay. And next will be John Moy and then Jack Ginberg.
Good afternoon, committee and members. My name is Anna Dennis. I'm the Executive Director for Common Cause Georgia. I'm also an over 30-year resident of Fulton County, and my family has actually been in this district since the turn of the century. We've always lived in the Westview area, and I've always been educated with the Atlanta public school system, if everyone wondered. So I'm here to talk about the transparency of this type of hearing. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If we're going to be expected to live with these district lines for the next decade, the process needs to be transparent and include plenty of options for public input. There needs to be remote options for testifying at every public hearing. There also needs to be other options using other web-based services like Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Google Meets, and we also need language access and ASL interpretation. No Georgian should be left out of this process. There also needs to be multiple in-person and virtual hearings across the state that actually fits in with days and timeframes that most Georgians can come and testify. I am a working mother. I have to go pick my daughter up from daycare. Other people do not have the privilege that I have to be standing here today. That's not fair. Also, the committee should provide access to the data so we can see when the drafts of the maps. We also should be provided with a written report explaining the justification for decisions that divide communities, municipalities, and counties. And we also would like the committee to not use alternative data sources to draw maps. Thank you all today.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. John Moy.
Good evening, Chairman Rich and Chairman Kennedy.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
to be with you this evening. My name is John Moy. I'm the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. And on behalf of our President and CEO, Nancy Flake Johnson, we are proudly celebrating 100 years of service to the metropolitan community as we continue to fight for equality and justice for all people, with an emphasis on African Americans. At the Urban League, we encourage full participation in the democratic process, and we work actively each and every day to help citizens overcome obstacles to voting. Georgia saw record turnout in the last cycle, and this is a testament to a collective desire to make our neighborhoods, our state, and our nation the best that they can be. The Urban League of Greater Atlanta calls for real transparency throughout the redistricting conversation, and we call for an end, Mr. Chairman, to racial gerrymandering. We are here to remind you that as stewards of the redistricting and reapportionment process, it is your responsibility to ensure that this process is fair, transparent, and inclusive of the many voices that you have been elected to represent. In this modern age, it is appalling that voters cannot go to a website that clearly describes the guidelines and expectations for the redistricting process, yet this is currently the case. The guidelines and criteria posted online are out of date, and no announcement has been made about when the maps or plans will be available. The public, Mr. Chairman, deserves better. We are here today to voice concerns of a possible discriminatory Georgia General Assembly strategy that undermines minority voting strength and ongoing changes in the Georgia electorate. And once again, all eyes, Mr. Chairman, are on Georgia. So let's change the narrative. We are depending on you to be fair, just, and law-abiding as you hold the power to determine a critical aspect of our state's future for at least the next 10 years to come. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jack Ginberg. And then Mr. or Miss, I can't make out the first name, Solvani, and Bill Cobb after that. Yes, sir. Floor is yours.
Hello. My name is Jack Emberg, and I'm a senior staff attorney with SPLC Action Fund, a 501c4 affiliate of the Southern Poverty Law Center. SPLC Action Fund is dedicated to upholding the fundamental right of all citizens to vote. In our June 15th virtual town hall testimony, we strongly encouraged the redistricting committees to provide community members an opportunity for meaningful input before the committees enacted their redistricting plans. The city of Atlanta has a population of over 450,000 people, a majority of whom are people of color. Many attend one of Atlanta's historically black colleges and universities. In its past redistricting plans, Georgia State Legislature diluted the strength of Atlanta's black voters by creating districts in which they could not elect their preferred candidates in violation of the Voting Rights Act. Georgia's state government is controlled by one party, but there are multiple political views that are represented in our state. The redistricting process needs to respect and reflect that. And the process needs to include all Georgians. We are disappointed that the committees have thus far not accepted the suggestion we made in our June 15th testimony to provide information in languages other than English, so it is accessible for the over 100,000 Georgians with limited English proficiency. When information regarding this town hall was released only in English, those Georgians were not included. Given our 2-minute time limit, I will discuss additional suggestions to make this process fair and more inclusive tomorrow and coming. Chairman Rich and Chairman Kennedy, you stated you would not answer questions, but I hope you will reconsider. I will close with this question. Will you commit to providing information about the redistricting process, including these town halls, in languages other than English?
Thank you for your, excuse me, Mr. Ginberg, thank you for your comments. All right. Solvani, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble making out the handwriting. Mr. or Miss Solvani? Okay. We'll come back if you're in the hallway and you hear me, we'll certainly get back to you. Next is Mr. Bill Cobb, and then Mark Bogar behind that. I hope.
If I may, for those whose names are called and you're on deck, if you will please line up along the wall so that we can keep the testimony moving in a more efficient way. Thank you. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
My name is Bill Cobb. I'm a retired resident of DeKalb County. I'm here principally to urge the committee to make these districts as politically competitive as possible. When a district is politically competitive, which is to say when a candidate has to get votes from people from the opposing party, better government results. People then the candidates and the office holders then have to pay attention not only to the opinions and needs of their own party, but they have to pay attention to the needs and opinions of the opposite party. Modern technology has given you the opportunity to go literally house by house in the redistricting process to see which ones of these houses will likely vote Democrat or likely vote Republican. You can create safe districts. You could create districts in which no opposing party vote is necessary at all in order to win an election. And that is the worst possible scenario. The closer you get to that, the closer you get to a situation where whoever is elected doesn't have to pay any attention to the opposing party, and in fact is incentivized to pay more attention to the more extreme elements of their own party in order to fundraise and in order to get people out to vote. So I urge that not be done. It is possibly the worst outcome for good government, for citizen participation, and for fairness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Mr. Bogar?
My name is Mark Bogar. I've lived in Gwinnett County pretty much all my life. Born in Fulton County, Georgia Baptist. Lived in DeKalb. I was a child at the time. Lived up in Tennessee for a while. Gwinnett County, I've lived in Lilburn for 44 years, same house. And I once was in the 7th District, and the county has changed in southern Gwinnett considerably. It has, when it got redistricted, it really represented pretty much what had happened. I hardly have any neighbors anymore that are original to me, and that's fine. And it seems to be changing every day. I'm a precinct captain. I've been a delegate for over 10 years, and what I'd love to see is that I would be able to have a little less of a challenge trying to, get people to listen. So the bottom line is I would just love to see y'all maybe take some of, Walton County or, more of Noonan, something where we kind of get a bigger slice of the pie. I mean, I realize Gwinnett County is pretty big, but as it is, we sort of feel as if, at least I do, I feel very disenfranchised, by the fact that I got severed off the rest of Gwinnett County. I was 7th District at one time. So anyway, just take that into consideration to try to expand our base a little bit better, because it's very challenging, to say the least. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bogar. We appreciate you being here. Andrea Young is next, and if Harold Franklin and Ross Llewellyn would come on up as well to be behind Ms. Young. Andrea Young. I'm sorry? Okay. All right, Ms. Young, if you can, if you're within the sound of my voice, come on down to the 341 and we'll work you in. Mr. Franklin, is that? Ross. Yeah, yes, okay. Mr. Llewellyn, go ahead, and Harold Franklin, if you'll come on up as well. Would you like me to Mr. Llewellyn, please go ahead and start, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Howdy, y'all. My name is Ross Llewellyn. I was born and I live in Atlanta. I am concerned and worried about this redistricting process. Seeing examples in other states like North Carolina in recent years put into laser-sharp focus the lengths to which partisan priorities can distort what should be an effort to uphold basic democratic principles as our state grows and changes. We're at a significant low point in our collective confidence in our institutions, including our government at the national, state, and local levels. We had a riot in the DC Capitol that we probably don't even have enough political unity and will to investigate to understand the problem. My point in this is to say that the choices made in this redistricting process will affect this confidence one way or another. My goal in my remarks is to cement this reality in the lawmakers before me. What would give me confidence is knowing that thoughtful metrics will be agreed upon beforehand and used to prevent advantaging one party over another in this process. I want to know what you would do to prevent packing and cracking these concepts that are used that constitute what gerrymandering can be. This isn't a game to win points on your pet political cause, even ones I care about. This is the fabric of our state democracy. And so if you're gerrymandering, you're continuing this nosedive we're currently experiencing in the confidence in our institutions and risking the foundation of our stable society. So I urge you to consider this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Llewellyn. Ms. Young? Ms. Young, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm Andrea Young, Executive Director of the ACLU of Georgia, born in Thomasville, Georgia, and raised in Atlanta, so I'm a daughter of this state. At the ACLU of Georgia, we stand for the right of every American citizen living in Georgia to have easy and equal access to the ballot. District maps must be drawn fairly. I've seen unfair maps play out in front of me when my dad, Andrea Young, was drawn out of the 5th Congressional District right here in Atlanta following the 1970 census. The greater Atlanta area has become even more diverse over the last 10 years. Preliminary data shows that while white voting population in the greater Atlanta area grew by only 3.7%, Black voting age population grew by 24.3%, Asian voting age population grew by 36%, and the Hispanic voting age population grew by 10.2%. Atlanta's dense population means that small manipulations in the way that districts are drawn can weaken the power of voters of color. As you think about drawing districts, I ask you to consider, how would you draw districts if you believed that Black voters had elected leaders that created prosperity for Georgia? How would you draw districts if you believed that white and Black citizens working together made the decisions that resulted in the world's busiest airport? How would you draw districts if you believed that the leaders elected by Black voters brought the Olympics to Georgia, bringing people from across the globe, across Georgia, from Metro Atlanta to Columbus to Savannah? How would you draw districts if you believed that voices and needs of all Georgians, white, Black, Asian, Hispanic, and Native American, were essential to the prosperity and well-being of our state? How would you draw districts if you believed that the diversity of our state is our strength? Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Mr. Harold Franklin, thank you for being with us, sir. You have the floor. And
may I just go ahead and call out the next names? John Gillin and Nicole Hines, if you will make your way to the front and line up along the wall.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rich and Chairman Kennedy, and thank you for this opportunity to be heard today. My name is Harold Franklin. I was born in Atlanta, and I'm a Fulton County resident. I attended Emory for undergrad and received my law degree from the Georgia State University College of Law. And I've been involved for over 20 years now in nonpartisan voting rights protection work called election protection. I also serve as the regional vice chair for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law and as chair of Georgia Election Protection with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. This work has taught me so many important things about the importance of our democracy and that the fact that there is nothing partisan whatsoever about ensuring that Black voters and other voters of color should have equal access and equal opportunity to elect candidates of their choice, and that right should not be denied in any way as a result of redistricting plans that dilute their voting strength in any way whatsoever. As discussed in the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights' recent report, The Central Role of Racial Demographics in Georgia Elections, the Lawyers Committee has serious concerns, and I do also, that this redistricting cycle will once again result in racially gerrymandered maps and redistricting plans that dilute minority voting strength. This report is available at the Lawyers Committee's website at www.lawyerscommittee.org, and I submitted it to the committee with my written comments. These concerns are justified given recent examples of mid-decade redistricting bills introduced by the Republican members of the Georgia legislature, and they include House Districts 105 and 111 in 2015, and House Districts 40 and 111 in 2017. In both instances there, when the districts became more competitive due to demographic changes, legislatures implemented changes that reduce the percentage of black populations of voters in those districts. And so I would ask that there be fairness and transparency in the redistricting plans that are being implemented. And I thank you for the time today.
Thank you,
with
Mr. Franklin. Chairman.
All right, Mr. John Gillin, if you'll make your way to the podium. Nicholas Hines, if you will stand on deck. Oh, Nicola, I'm sorry. And Lavida Tough. Lavida Tough, if you'll make your way to room 341. Thank you. All right, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Kennedy, Chairman Rich, and the rest of our assembled legislators. My name is John Gillin, and I'm a resident of Decatur. President Barack Obama famously said that elections have consequences. And in the state of Georgia last year, our elections have indeed had consequences. Operating under a redistricting plan by the majority Republican Party in 2010, we saw Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, John Ossoff, and Raphael Warnock receive the state's certifications as the winners of last year's top-of-the-ticket elections. But after a record voter turnout in 2020, the Democrats claim that Georgia's electoral processes are Jim Crow 2.0, designed to suppress the vote of minorities. This is not only false, but disingenuous. In a majority of the statewide races, our citizens kept our state government in the responsible hands of the Republican Party. And as a result, the Republican Party has been granted the right by the people to redistrict our state. Democrats will cry and scream about the unfairness of the Republicans managing the process. But again, elections have consequences. Truth be told, Democrats, if the shoe were on the other foot, would cram through partisan redistricting to the very limit right now. We are witnessing a unique time in our country's history, where the Democratic Party is clearly trying to create a one-party nation through widely promoted or attempted power grabs like usurping states' rights through the passing of the unconstitutional H.R. 1, adding D.C. and Puerto Rico as states, abolishing the Electoral College, eliminating the U.S. Senate filibuster, and packing the Supreme Court. We can rest assured that Stacey Abrams and her army are trying to effect change in our state that is reflective of the national one-party objective. I encourage our state to fairly and equitably redistrict our state for the next 10 years in a manner that will accurately reflect the political character of our great state.
Thank you, Mr. Gillin. Ms. Hines. And then Lavida Tough, you're next. If Salek Sohani can make your way to the front and line up along the wall. Thank you. All right, you may proceed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Hines, and I am a resident of the city of Atlanta right here in Fulton County for the past 8 years. I'm also the president for the League of Women Voters, Atlanta Fulton County, and a board of directors for the League of Women Voters of Georgia. Redistricting is making Georgia lawmakers of both political parties have used the opportunity to engage in creative map making to protect the incumbents or weaken political opponents. Hence why I'm here asking for fair and transparent mapping. Our first 3 words in our Constitution is, "We the people." And even though that phrase has changed over the years, the core meaning means the same. We the people is intended to make sure American voters are the drivers of their government. When we have fair and transparent mapping, it not just gives everyone a voice, it makes a great impact in making sure that the people at the table who represents our communities are representing their communities. That they, every step of their, sorry, I'm going a little separate there, okay. It's basically, if we have fair mapping, we have representatives that show and shares an interest in our communities. We have to make sure that not just where I live right now, Fulton County, but all of our small towns and small communities also have a voice. That their communities are not broken up, that they can understand who their districts' representatives are, who our congressional districts are. When we redistrict, we also have not just community congressional lines that we deal with, we also deal with education and other resources that are normally affects our day-to-day lives. So once again, I ask that we use fair and transparent mapping to ensure that the representatives value the diversity of the community they represent. We, the people, are just asking for fair and transparent mapping. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Ms. Lavida Tough, if you'll take the podium. Has Salek Sohani come into the room? Okay. If Dante Thompson will make your way also to room 341 and line on the wall. All right, Ms. Tough, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lavida Tough, and I'm the Policy Director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta, and I have the pleasure and honor of standing here today to represent the Georgia Immigrant Rights Alliance. I come today once again to ask you to take into consideration ways that you can accommodate limited English proficient Georgians. 1 in 10 Georgians is an immigrant. And on 2 separate occasions, we have tried to speak to the chairs of this committee about the growing need and concern around language access, yet those cries have gone ignored. What we do know is in places like Gwinnett County, that's a Section 203 jurisdiction, Spanish is required for elections, yet tonight, there was nothing in Spanish. There were no translators, there were no interpreters, there were no services provided to the LEP Georgians who deserve to be here and be a part of this process. 41.3% of Georgians are LEP, and yet tonight, you ignored them. You left them out of this process. And despite the fact that you ignored our letter that was signed by over 63 organizations from across the state, we will not be deterred, we will not be defeated. We continue to demand that language access be made a priority for this process, and that the immigrant population of Georgians who bring so much to Georgia don't continue to be ignored. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Tough. Mr. Sohani. And if Michael Braun, B-R-A-N-N, will make your way. Thank you. All right, the floor is yours. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Salek Sohani. I am a community organizer with Georgia Muslim Voter Project, also known as GAMVP. GAMVP, we are a nonpartisan organization that works to civically engage Muslim communities and the individuals that reside among them in an effort to increase voter registration, voter awareness, and their desire to actively participate in the democratic process. The communities we serve, the Muslim, the immigrant, the Black, and brown communities, have been politically underrepresented for far too long. Historically, our community has been considered to be apathetic toward voting and civic engagement. As such, our community members' opinions have been devalued, and we have lacked representation within each district. I assure you that we are not apathetic. Our communities across the state continue to advocate for fair representation by demonstrating unprecedented voter participation in local and federal elections. Surveys indicate that AAPI voters, AAPI early voters in the 2020 election exceeded their 2016 turnout by 58%, which demonstrates the enthusiasm among AAPI voters, many of whom are Muslim like myself, to provide their input regarding their elected officials and the decisions that affect the interests of our communities. Redistricting is one of our community's interests, and we demand that our voices are considered throughout this process. Furthermore, we demand additional transparency throughout the redistricting process. Our communities seek to be actively involved within redistricting. However, information about public town halls, the upcoming special redistricting session, census data, and draft maps has been virtually non-existent. We demand this information be widely disseminated among our communities and be made accessible to all Georgians, regardless of their background. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sohani. Mr. Dante Thompson, and then Michael Braun is behind. All right, Maria Palacios, if you will make your way to room 341. Thank you. All right, you may proceed.
Good evening, everyone. To the honorable members of the Joint Reapportionment and Redistricting Committees, my name is Dante Thompson. I'm the chair of the DeKalb Young Republicans. I reside in the 5th Congressional District. I'm here today to represent the interests of the DeKalb Young Republicans and to speak to their concerns the concerns shared by my members. Currently, DeKalb County offers only a Democrat delegation. This delegation has maintained its stronghold in DeKalb County for many years. Conservative voices are alienated in DeKalb County. American greatness has always conquered any challenges when ideas are allowed to compete openly and honestly. As a proud Black conservative American, I ask this honorable members of this committee to respectfully consider more opportunity for conservative voices to have a meaningful representation within DeKalb County. A one-party rule is detrimental and ultimately does not advance the interests of the communities. DeKalb County desperately needs a balanced approach that allows for more competition. No voices should be left out. All should be included. I ask this committee, when we're drawing our maps, to consider an equitable balance. As the district lines exist now, no conservative had the opportunity to compete in DeKalb County. I appreciate the time and consideration this committee will give to this process. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Michael Braun is up next. And do we have Maria Palacios? Okay. And next after Maria will be Linda Chapman, Chapman, I believe. All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the rest of the committee for this opportunity to speak. My name is Michael Braun, that's B-R-A-U-N, and that's not an admonishment of the chair, that's an admonishment of my own handwriting, I'm sure. My family and I live and work in DeKalb County, Georgia. Over the past 6 months, I have immersed myself into the business of local governance, attending city council meetings, studying election law, and volunteering with the DeKalb County Republican Party, where I serve as third vice chair. And while I have engaged with the members of my political community some 4 dozen times since the beginning of the year, the interaction that stands out clearest in my mind was my time as a poll watcher on January 5th, when myself and a Democrat colleague spent 7 hours together in a Clarkston gymnasium and talked about our lives. Despite having different backgrounds, different upbringings, different political alignments, and even different systems of morality, we came together that morning to further the cause of American democracy. Despite having extremely different perspectives on the efficacy of the recent general election, we spoke in a civil, genuine, and eventually even heartfelt manner, glad to be in the presence of an American with different views but a common goal. I hold the members of this committee in great esteem, Republicans and Democrats alike. Your burden as leaders is exasperated by today's style of discourse, a style that's based less on conversations face-to-face in our front yards and coffee shops, and more on the cold divisiveness that translates well onto the phone or computer screen. I know that this committee seeks to do what is right for their people, the American people. And as you make your decisions on redistricting and drawing our congressional maps, I hope my story serves as a reminder that the American people thrive, not when we relegate our differences to specific circles of influence, but when we share and celebrate our differences, face to face, in our neighborhoods, in our offices, and in our polling places. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. All right, next up will be Maria Palacios. After her will be Linda Chapman, I believe. And then next, after Ms. Chapman, will be Wanda Bailey Jenkins. Okay, you may proceed.
Muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es María de Rosario Palacios. Soy directora ejecutiva de Georgia Familias Unidas. Soy residente de Gwinnett County. Soy votante en Gwinnett County y soy madre de 3. Hello. For everyone who doesn't speak Spanish, in the same manner for many folks who do not speak English, I want to make sure that you're included in this conversation, so I will repeat my intro in English. My name is Maria de Rosario Palacios. I am the executive director of Georgia Familias Unidas, and we are a collective aid organization that serves a lot of the disproportionately impacted low-wage workers that work in poultry processing plants and other food processing plants across the state. I am also a Gwinnett County resident, voter, and mother of 3. What language you speak is the language that you want us to hear and involve ourselves in. The redistricting process is not accessible to monolingual Spanish speakers, of which there are many, not just in Gwinnett County. However, it is mandated from December 5th of 2016 when the Census Bureau Director directed Gwinnett County under the formula of Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act to incorporate Spanish language access into voting. These processes are democratic processes of our republic that are necessary for every single person to be able to be involved in. The greater Atlanta area includes Gwinnett County, and there is no Spanish language access here. My family, my friends, my loved ones cannot access this meeting today. And it's ironically enough, my twins, who are 5 years old, were required in Gwinnett County to test out of ESOL requirements despite the fact that they were born in Cumming and raised by a mother like me, whose first language is actually English. And so I ask you, if you felt lost at the beginning of this conversation when I introduced myself, consider about the many democratic folks who are listening to this in English and cannot understand and involve themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Palacios. Ms. Linda Chapman. After that will be Wanda Bailey Jenkins. Has Ms. Jenkins come to the room? Okay. And then after that will be Cynthia Battles. Ms. Cynthia Battles, if you'll make your way to the wall next to the podium. Thank you. All right, you may proceed.
I want to thank you all for holding this meeting and for allowing the public to speak. My name is Linda Chapman. I am one of the few actually born in Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up elsewhere, but I returned after college. I have a pharmacy degree from Auburn and a law degree from Emory and a master's in healthcare policy. I live in the Garden Hills community of Buckhead, in that neighborhood, and this is in Fulton County, city of Atlanta. And I feel as if I'm in an island. I don't know who represents me. I've been active in various community, civic, church, political activities since about 1990. I raised 3 sons here, 2 of whom still live in the city. I want to speak personally. I want to speak about the community of interest that exists where I live. And as you know, the Buckhead community is currently looking at de-annexation. I am not taking a position on that. What I am saying is that please consider Buckhead as a community of interest. And over the years, as I've gone to church, shopped in grocery stores, taken my kids and played baseball and things like that, when they played NYO at Chastain, we sat on the sidelines with folks from Sandy Springs. We share a community of interest. Split, it's very difficult. I personally have lived in both the 5th District under John Lewis and in the 11th under Barry Loudermilk. The greatest similarities for Buckhead exist with Sandy Springs and portions of the Brookhaven area. We share many of these things. It's difficult to live in an area that is split because we lose our voices. And I think that's what we're all here for, is to have a voice in our government. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Chapman. Next up will be Ms. Bailey Jenkins. Then after that, Ms. Cynthia Battles. And then if Fanika Miller will also make your way to room 341. Fanika Miller. All right, you may proceed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Swanda Bailey Jenkins, and I'm from Henry County. Today, while I belong to many different organizations representing thousands of people, I'm here to speak on behalf of myself, the residents of Henry County, and all the voters of this state. What I would ask of you today is to allow input from the people, to please be transparent in this process. I ask that you would share information with residents. I ask that you not only allow input, but you also consider the impact for the people. I ask that you do not draw lines that would disenfranchise any group. The right to vote is a fundamental right. To make that vote null and void by the redistricting process is an injustice. I hope that you will not draw maps without considering local impact and the impact from the communities that will be affected. I ask also that you do not use redistricting to suppress votes, especially for Black voters. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bailey Jenkins. Ms. Cynthia Battles. Has Fanika Miller made her way? Okay. And after Fanika Miller will be James Woodall. All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, committee members, chairs. My name is Cindy Battles, and I am the Director of Policy and Engagement for the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, an organization that was convened by the Honorable Dr. Lowry, who was, a hero of the civil rights movement. I am also a proud community member in Sylvan Hills in Fulton County. History has shown us that gerrymandering is a tool used by both Democrats and Republicans to dilute Georgians' power to choose their elected officials. The vote is Georgia's voice, and both parties are guilty of muzzling that voice in the name of gaining or retaining power. Previously, we had Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act to push against egregious attempts to dilute our vote. Unfortunately, Section 5 was dismantled by the U.S. Supreme Court, and therefore there is no law to make sure maps are drawn that empower all Georgians. We must rely on your integrity to do so. Because of that, this process should be as transparent and nonpartisan as possible. We have seen past decisions in the redistricting process that dilute the power of certain communities to choose legislators that best represent them. While the letter of Section 2 of the VRA has been adhered to in creating majority-minority districts, those districts have also been used to avoid creating opportunity districts. Communities of interest have been divided, mid-cycle changes to district lines made to protect incumbents. The people of Georgia have reasons not to trust this process. If SB 202 was passed to, quote, restore voter confidence, then the redistricting process should be conducted in a way that also restores voter confidence, particularly Black and brown voters who have seen decisions made that, deliberately or not, impact their ability to cast a ballot or believe their vote counts. I'm sorry. All of this might be unconscious. All of these decisions might be unconscious and not deliberate. But since we must rely on your integrity, we ask that you make sure to avoid even the appearance of deliberate partisan politics in the redistricting process. Partisan gerrymandering may not be illegal, but it is unethical. And if it is the legislature's body's goal to restore voter confidence, they should be working to restore the voter confidence of all Georgians.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Okay. Actually, that was Ms. Cynthia Battles. Now we have Ms. Miller, Ms. Fanika Miller. And has James Woodall made his way to the room? Okay, very good. And then after Mr. Woodall will be Stacy Hopkins, if you will make your way to room 341 and stand next to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to the committee, and thank you for the opportunity. I am Fanika Miller. I am the state coordinator for Black Voters Matter. I hail from Houston County, Georgia, representing Black voters in over 75 counties across the state, primarily in rural communities. Houston County is one of those communities that was gerrymandered, where Black and brown voices were carved out of political power. We've had an all-male, all-Republican state delegation for over 10 years, which mirrors what we have in our state constitutional officers, which are all male, all Republican, all white men. So I find it hard to believe that folks feel disenfranchised when we've had that political party in power for over 10 years. Black communities have been historically gerrymandered, redlined, and drawn out of political power through corrupt redistricting process. We need a transparent process to bring more members into a process that draws community of interest maps, which can be used to advocate for fair and equitable lines. This will enshrine and increase minority participation and power in the legislative process. In doing so, Black voters and other marginalized voters will be able to combat a myriad of issues related to housing, education, public safety, economic stability, and political representation. It's time to put power back into the hands of the people to choose their elected officials versus elected officials choosing their constituents. This year, the legislature passed one of the most egregious voter suppression bills in the country, which Black Voters Matter believes is in direct response to increased voter turnout in Black and other marginalized communities that showed up to elect 2 U.S. senators from Georgia and a new president in one of the safest and most secure elections in the history of this country. We're prepared to fight against maps that draw our people out of power in the same way that we fought in the past legislative session to protect the right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, please, I would like to, you're infringing upon others' opportunities to speak. Let's hold the applause. This is not the appropriate place for that. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Woodall is on the podium now. We should have Stacy Hopkins next after him, and then if Heather Hallett can make her way to room 341. Thank you. All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and to the committee, good afternoon. My name is Reverend James Woodall. I am the state president for the Georgia NAACP, and I thank you for this opportunity to share. As our state becomes more diverse, it is crucial that this process be equitable to all Georgians, and it is our job to ensure we empower communities by exposing gerrymandered maps. Based on the Secretary of State's voter file data, the scheduled town halls released by this committee are not equitable. It excludes 7 of the 10 most populous counties in this state, most notably Gwinnett County, the most diverse county in this state, as well as Chatham County, which is home to Georgia's second largest municipality. Also, as defined by the Atlanta Regional Commission, half of Georgia's voters live within Metro Atlanta, yet only 1 of the 9 in-person town halls will occur in these counties. Also, when crafting maps, this committee should adhere to best practices, redistricting principles, as well as standards to ensure that the voices of all Georgians are heard. These include 1, adherence to the Voting Rights Act; 2, ensuring communities of interest are kept together where possible; 3, all maps be as contiguous as possible; 4, minimizing population deviations between districts; and 5, precluding partisan gerrymandering that benefits either party. Also, I would like to make mention that currently all legislative communications within this committee are considered confidential, and that the Georgia General Assembly is excluded from open meetings and open records acts, which undermines public input as well as confidence in this process. And so this committee should dedicate itself to publicly releasing all plans and input provided to or created by members of this committee. Also, drafted maps distributed to or created by members of this committee should be released to the public immediately and on an ongoing basis. We cannot undermine public confidence in this process with backroom deals and faux public hearing without full transparency. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Woodall. Next on the podium is Stacy Hopkins. After that will be Heather Hallett. Is Heather Hallett in the room? Okay. And after that, if Kip Carr would please make your way to the wall next to the podium. All right, you may proceed, Ms. Hopkins.
Hi, my name is Stacy Hopkins. I'd like to thank Representative Rich for having this committee, and thank you to the representatives who are here today. I'm standing here because I have been categorized as a myth by the Secretary of State. I was one who was involved in the 2017 voter purge. I'm not dead. I'm actually a real person. And so with my experience with going through Georgia and the state trying to illegally purge me, I really don't have very much faith in this group to come up with anything that is anything. And after the test earlier that was blatantly partisan, I don't have any faith left in this government, and this is a shame because I have a husband who has fought for this country. My daughter serves in the Navy. I've had at least one person in each generation to serve this country, and to be insulted by the state of Georgia, you won't even recognize me to have the right to vote. I don't expect you to recognize my neighborhood. I really don't. I really don't think this process should be in your hands because I don't understand how one keeps an independent committee independent and free of corruption, free of influence. I don't understand how you have a bipartisan commission when there's only 2 political parties included. There are other political parties in this state. Those voters deserve representation. And I do not believe, I keep hearing about how racism, it exists, but it doesn't exist in Georgia. But I get shown it every single day by this state, and they have never apologized to me or all the other voters who were involved in that purge. Do you really think I have faith that you will be able to come up with anything that is remotely bipartisan? Dazzle me.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Next, we have Heather Hallett.
Hello, and thank you for holding this hearing. I am a resident of Atlanta, and just kind of want to zoom out a little bit and offer some comments from Rich McCormack, who in a fundraising email when he was announcing that he was likely to run again for the 6th District congressional seat, said, "Republicans are in control of this process, and I expect a district that is friendly to Republicans." So with that comment, I just want to point out how damning that is about the process. The previous commenter was talking about the bipartisan process. I think I heard somebody else talk about how elections have consequences. Redistricting should not be one of those consequences. When you have people manipulating lines to keep themselves in power, that is akin to the kids in the sandbox just grabbing all the toys, right? The voters should be protected in this redistricting process. You all are in an impossible situation. It has been done by Democrats. It will be done by Democrats again if they get into power unless we reform this process. There is not a reason in the world for partisan politics to dictate what our district lines look like. The voters should be divvied up. We have computers that Uber can send cars all over the world and pick people up for rides. We have the power to do this in an independent manner. And while I would hope that you guys would do the right thing on your own, the Supreme Court says you don't have to, and so you won't until we reform the process. Those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Hallett.
All right, Kip Carr, please. Kip Carr, and then Rebecca Deltart will be after Mr. Carr.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rich, Chairman Kennedy, members of the House and Senate redistricting committees. My name is Kip Carr, and I live in Brookhaven. This is my 8th consecutive month in Brookhaven, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I observed the public hearing a couple of weeks ago virtually, and I deeply appreciate the feedback from Georgia citizens, especially the young people. And I found their feedback to be enlightening and informative. This time 10 years ago, and I'm not sure, Chairman Rich or Chairman Kennedy, if your legislative service had begun at that point, I remember at Georgia Tech, the one public hearing that was held in Atlanta, and how countless residents asked that were members of the 5th Congressional District to be put in the 6th Congressional District at that time. And as a result, the lines were drawn to basically reflect the will of the people. In that very same spirit, I would ask that this committee would reject any scenario that would put Congresswoman Lucy McBath of the 6th District, of which I live, and Congresswoman Carolyn Boudreaux of the 7th in the same congressional district. I do not believe that such a move would be in the best interest of the communities they represent. Also, I urge your support not just of an independent redistricting commission, but for public hearings statewide on that idea, as well as virtually for public comments. Lastly, for those that are listening, I urge you to take advantage of the public comment portion that Chairman Rich mentioned at the beginning of this hearing. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Ms. Deltart?
DeHart. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Chairs, member of the committee, I'm Rebecca DeHart, the CEO of Fair Count. Fair Count is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization founded to achieve a fair and accurate count in the 2020 census. While the count happens decennially, we see the census as an ongoing function of democracy and redistricting as a natural extension of that. Today, we are here to support fair, equitable, and transparent redistricting efforts. Fair Count remains steadfast in our belief that everyone in every corner of the state deserves to have their voice heard in this process. While we understand that the changes to the census deadlines have left state legislatures in the lurch, it remains paramount that the communities the maps will either divide or bring together have the opportunity to provide thoughtful commentary after the first drafts of the maps have been generated. Delays or not, a real public comment period with the proposed maps in full view should not be denied to the people. Our work with the decennial census shows that the data set is worth waiting for, and it's the best data that we will have to guide the map making for the next 10 years. To augment that data, Fair Count is working across the state generating community of interest maps. This process allows Georgians to visually mark their communities of interest onto real maps. We will make these maps available to all of you on the committee before the start of the special session. More than half of the states in the nation make community of interest maps a criterion point in redistricting, as these shared interests are likely to result in a desire to share the same legislative district in order to secure more effective representation. To that end, we are also hopeful that the redistricting criteria for this committee will be shared sooner than later and well before the start of the special session, a process that has historically gone by very quickly, to ensure that the people know that there is a demonstrable commitment to the inclusion of their voices. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. DeHart, and please forgive me for misreading your name. I apologize for that. Thank you. Lee Pasakow, and to be followed by Julie Boland and Alfred Shivey Brooks. If y'all could come on forward, please. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Lee Pasakow. I've been a resident of Decatur for 30 years. I'm in Georgia Senate District 42, Georgia House District 86, and U.S. Congress District 4. I was a census worker during the 2020 census. We worked very hard to provide an accurate count of people in DeKalb and Clayton counties. I urge you to have a transparent process as you draw the maps for 2021. There are numerous examples of gerrymandering being used by both Democrats and Republicans. In 2018, 58% of Georgia candidates for the U.S. Congress, state Senate, and state House had no opponent. And 80% of these races were won by margins of 60 to 100%. Most Republicans and Democrats are in safe seats. My House District 86 really looks like a salamander. I urge you to conduct a fair and transparent process with substantial voter input. Take into consideration, please, that there are many active citizen groups watching and monitoring your process. We will object when the maps dilute community voting power. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Julie Boland. Ms. Boland, you have the floor.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm Julie Boland. I've lived in Marietta, Georgia for the past 25 years. I'm a board member for the League of Women Voters of Georgia and a member of the Marietta Cobb League of Women Voters. The League is a nonpartisan organization. I'm here today to emphasize the need for real transparency of the redistricting process in Georgia. I understand there's no constitutional requirement for the legislature to make the process transparent, but I hope the committee will appreciate that full transparency is the right thing to do. The decisions made by this committee will affect every Georgian's life for the next 10 years, and all of us have a right to know how the decisions are being made. Here are some ways that I think we can make the process more transparent. First, the committee needs to adopt rules and guidelines for the special session and post them online before the special session begins. All decisions about district lines need to be made in public meetings that are live streamed and recorded. These need to be offered in a format that makes them accessible to people with disabilities and those with a language other than English. While we appreciate the public town halls currently scheduled by the joint redistricting committees, they're not sufficient. Members of the public do not have enough time or information to be meaningfully engaged. We need to see draft maps that are published as soon as possible, and a process needs to be put in place for the public to submit alternative maps online for consideration by the committee. Every effort needs to be made to draw competitive districts, as the speaker just before me pointed out. Our democracy is harmed when districts are so extremely gerrymandered that only one party has any hope of winning an election. And Georgia's been notorious in past elections for having few truly competitive districts. Thank you very much for your time.
By Crystal Greer and Nina Tarabi. Okay. Yep. Mr. Alfred Shivey Brooks.
Thank you, chairs and committee members. My name is Alfred Shivey Brooks.
Forgive me. Okay.
I'm a resident of Atlanta, and by day I'm a high school educator. I teach economics, personal finance, and government to high school seniors in Riverdale, Georgia. Many of my students are those individuals who are voting for the first time. And I get a good opportunity to understand how they view the political world and why they are so apathetic towards it. Young people have been led to believe that their voices do not matter. And I work tirelessly to help them to see that their voices matter, and if they didn't, then those in political power would not work so hard to quiet it. Young people have lost trust, but not in our government. They've lost trust that those who continue to disenfranchise communities of people who look like me continue to hold power and keep it that way. Young people want districts that are competitive across the board. Young people are watching us, and they are witnessing how decade over decade, districts are being drawn to be less competitive. Young people do not want politicians to choose their voters, when our democratic republic is designed so that the people choose those who represent them. Young people want to see an end to the political tribalism in America, and Georgia can be the epicenter of that change. Young people are aware of how political parties are consolidating representation from communities of color into newly merged districts, which are intentionally gerrymandered to ensure that less voices of color are present under this great gold dome. My grandmother would always say, "Baby, the world is always turning, but so too are the tables. And one day all of our seats will be on the other side of the table. So I urge you to exercise integrity, because you won't always be where you are." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Crystal Greer. And then we'll have Nina Tarabi and then Hannah Joy. Yes, ma'am, you have the floor.
Yes, thanks for having me here. I'm Crystal Greer, resident of Clayton County and Director of Programming and Media for Protect the Vote, a nonprofit and nonpartisan organization that focuses on raising awareness of the issues that target Black, brown, and young voters from participating in free and fair elections. Thank you to the Redistricting Committee for listening at the last meeting and making it easy to submit public commentary for these meetings and making the schedule easy to locate on your website. We've also noticed more tweets coming from the GA Hub and Senate Press Office, so thank you to the comms team as well. We ask that you continue to make this more convenient as people become aware of the special session on redistricting and allow constituents to continue to speak out and include different languages to include all Georgians. Just as we watched the education video on redistricting and reapportionment, we ask that you give grace to those who live in these communities that aren't aware of this process. We're going to be looking for those fair and reflective squares to happen, as Senator Kennedy spoke about, and we're looking forward to an equal and transparent process during the special session. I also suggest we continue to allow for public commentary from all constituents during the special session to ensure we are getting equal representation. If the majority of residents in that district are not being heard or educated about what is going on, there's no way that this process will be fair and equal. Thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to attending the coming meetings across the state with our team to continue participating in this process and spreading awareness.
Thank you, Ms. Greer. Ms. Nina Tarabi.
Good afternoon. My name is Mina Tarabi. I'm a community activist, an organizer, and the founder of Voice of the People Georgia. In 2020, we saw a wave of new political courage. Georgia had the highest youth turnout and an election said to be the golden standard by a Republican governor and Secretary of State. But then in 2021, voter suppression was in full swing under the guise of so-called election integrity. Jim Crow 2.0 tried to make it harder for communities of color to vote. We saw a criminalization and punishment of being Black and being poor. Baker v. Carr ruled that each person who voted became protected under the 14th Amendment and the one person, one vote policy. Biased reapportionment was totally done away with, and every person's vote should count equally. No one should redistrict to dilute or increase people's votes or hurt one group over another. And communities should be able to have a chance to elect their desired representative. The redistricting process should prioritize ensuring fair representation for communities of color, who continue to be drastically underrepresented in Congress and even more underrepresented in state legislatures. We see that in this House. When we look around, we do not see what we see outside. The purpose of redistricting and reapportionment is to ensure proportional equal representation. This cannot be possible when the state legislature committee on reapportionment is not representative of Georgia's party alignment. Voter-determined districts are based on the principle that however the voters in a state are divided between the major parties, the districts should be divided in the same way. Redistricting should not be a partisan problem. It shouldn't seek to pit Black legislators against one another. It shouldn't disenfranchise Black communities or make it harder to vote. So I ask the committee, please do your job that you took the oath to do and do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robbie. Next is Hannah Joy, and then will be to be followed by, I apologize, it's Britt Jones, and it's hyphenated. I can't make out the last name, but Britt Jones, and then Kimberly Williams next. Okay, Ms. Joy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good evening to the committee and to everyone here, fellow Georgians. My name is Hannah Joy Geber-Selassie. I serve as the Executive Director for Protect the Vote, a nonpartisan voting rights organization that was started on the heels of this past legislature session where we saw unprecedented voter suppression. I'm here also as a proud product of Atlanta, DeKalb County, and Gwinnett County, and I've seen our state evolve in so many ways over the years. After that first redistricting hearing, I hope we all noticed something, an uptick of youth voters, young people who came out and spoke their voices. Those voices should not be undercounted. Those voices are the ones that we should be making a priority because they are truly the future. We saw young leaders, young activists, young voters from Students Against Sunny, Civic Georgia, and so many other groups. And I encourage you all, in fact, I urge you all to take their voices seriously, to hold meetings, to hold continued dialogue with those students and those voices in particular. I'm also the daughter of East African immigrants who came to this country as refugees, and I know what their experience was like coming here without speaking English as a first language. I echo Lavida's charge from Asian Americans Advancing Justice to make this redistricting process more accessible to our neighbors who do not speak English as a first language. I urge us to make voting more accessible to people who do not speak English as a first language, as we saw in DeKalb County with leadership that tailored with multi-language literature to voters from across the world. I stand in solidarity